Okay, now we're going to discuss how the chess pieces move. And here I've cleared the board, and my chess program requires that I have a king on the board. And here's the white king. Up here we have the black king. And here is a white rook. And I want to just discuss the movement of the rook in general. Now the rook moves horizontally and vertically any number of squares. So you can think of that as moving up and down and sideways as many squares as it wants to. So in this case, the rook can move to any of the squares that I highlight in green. So it can move horizontally or side to side any number of squares. So it can move this way or this way or vertically, sort of up and down. So here it can move to any one of these squares. Okay? So now let's put this into practice. Let's say we want to move our rook over to this square that I've highlighted in red, over by the king. Well, it can only get there. Let's say we want to take 2 moves to get there. Well, there's only one way to do that. We have to first move the rook over to here, horizontally, and then vertically down to here. So you have to move it over and then down. Okay? Because that's how the rook moves. It can't get there in one move. It has to take 2 moves to get here. It could take more. You could, for example, you could move the rook, over to here, down, then over to here, then over to here, then over to here, then over to here. And this could be one path that the rook takes. It could move down, over, down, over, down. But if you notice, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves. To accomplish something I can just do in 2 moves. Okay? Let's do another example. Let's say you want to move the rook over to this square in 3 moves. Okay? Now there's many different ways to get there. But here's the one I'm going to do. I'm going to move up 1 square, or vertically 1 square, over 4 squares, and then up 1 square. Okay? Or maybe another path could be I can move all the way down to here, vertically, and then maybe I'll just move over 2 squares, then just move over 1 square, and then up all the way up here. And notice how the rook only moves horizontally, left to right, and up and down. So vertically and horizontally, or up and down, and left and right. Sort of moves in straight lines. Okay? Now let's discuss the next piece, the bishop. Okay, I've replaced the rook with a bishop. So before remember the rook was here, now I've replaced it with the piece called the bishop. Now the bishop moves along diagonals. It doesn't move like the rook. It doesn't move in straight lines. It moves along diagonals. What I mean by diagonal is like this. It moves diagonally. And it can move diagonally any amount of squares that it wants to. So let me highlight the squares that this bishop can move to. It can move diagonally in this direction, or it can move diagonally in this direction, or it can move diagonally in this direction, or it can move diagonally in this direction. It can move to any one of the highlighted squares in green. Okay? So let's practice moving the bishop. Let's say we wanted to move the bishop over to this square. Now notice when we had a rook it took us 2 moves, but the bishop can just move straight there in 1 move. Okay? It can move in 1 move right to there. Let's say we wanted to move the bishop over to this square. Now we could take, it's going to take us at least 2 moves. We can't just move straight there. Because remember, we could only move along, or move, when I highlighted the squares, this was not a highlighted square. So how can we get there? Well, there's many different ways. If we wanted to take 2 moves, we have 2 possibilities. We could move here diagonally, and then up here. Or we can go here, and then diagonally this way. Okay, so it would take us 2 moves. Here, and then here, or diagonally here, and then over to here. Let's say we wanted to do it in 3 moves. Well, whoops, I've cleared off the square I wanted to move to. So, maybe we could move here, and then maybe 2. Well, I guess I'm thinking more than 3 moves, but this is one option. So to get to the same square, the bishop could move here, 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 and then all the way over to here. Notice it's not limited. It just doesn't move 1 square at a time. It can move here, it moved 1 square, and here it moved 1 square, and here it moved 1 square, but here it moved 4 squares to get here. Okay? Another path this bishop could take would be maybe here, here. Whoops, I highlighted the wrong square. So let me start over. It can move here, and then to here, and then to here. So it moves diagonally. Here it moved 2 squares, here it moved 2 squares, here it moved 4 squares. Now I want to point out that if your bishop starts on white, it's always going to be on white. Notice I can't move this bishop, which is on a white square, to a black square, because it only moves diagonally on the white squares. And if it moves along a diagonal, all the diagonal squares are white. So it can't, this white, or this bishop that is on white, cannot get to a dark square. Okay, now let's discuss the queen. Okay, I've replaced the bishop with a queen. Now the queen is like a combination of the rook and the bishop. It can move horizontally, vertically, and diagonally any amount of squares that it wants to. So let me highlight all the squares that the queen can go to. It can move vertically, horizontally, and diagonally all the amount of squares that it wants to. Notice that this is just like if you combine the bishop and the rook of the 2 previous pieces that I covered. So these are all the squares the queen can go to, and the queen is the most powerful piece on the board. So effectively it can move in any direction, any amount of squares that it wants to. So let's just practice moving the queen around just a few times. So let's say we wanted to move the queen to this square. Well, there's many different ways of getting here. We can move the queen diagonally and then horizontally. We can move it just horizontally and vertically to get here. These are just 2 possibilities. Or we can move it vertically this way, horizontally this way, and then diagonally that way. Notice that the queen can move any amount of squares it wants to in one move. Here it moved 3 and then 1. Here it moved 1 and then 3. Here it moved 3 squares, 1 square, and then 2 squares. It's not limited to the amount of squares it can move, or its direction. It can move horizontally, vertically, and diagonally, or up, down, over, diagonally. It's the most powerful piece. So hopefully this helps you understand how the queen moves. Now let's talk about the king.